I was born on the island of Hawai, the Big Island, more specifically in North Hilo, in an area known then as Kaikea. Shortly after I was born, I was born on September 27, 1935, and shortly after I was born here, our family, being fatherless here, moved to Hilo. And I remained and grew up in Hilo until my junior year in high school, when the family moved over to Honolulu. And I have, Honolulu has one Sebong. My mother's name was One Kim Su Bok. Dad's birth date I cannot recall here. I recall he was born in the late 1800s. I know mom was born in the year 1900. Specifically the month, I believe it was in July of 2000. Specific day I cannot recall. Dad, as I understand, and again this is merely information passed down from family and the siblings, Dad was born in Seoul, Korea, and Mom was born in Ulsan, Korea. As far as their historical background, I know very little about both Mom and Dad. I know Mom came to the islands in the year 1917 as a picture bride and remained ever since in the islands until she passed away in the year 2000. I stand corrected, 1994. And Dad, as far as his arrival in the islands, it's really questionable here. I'm guessing that perhaps it was in the early 1900s, some years before Mom came to the islands, that he arrived in the islands under conditions that I really do not know. I've heard stories that he was perhaps a political exile, for during that time Korea was being annexed as a colony by Japan, and there's some story that perhaps he was a political exile and left Korea due to these kinds of conditions. And he lived and remained here in the islands until he went back to Korea just after I was born in I think it's 1936. And he passed away in I believe it was in 1946 in Korea. He never returned after he left. He died just after the war, but remember again, he left the islands in 1936. This is before the war. Under conditions less than complimentary. Yes, as in our family, we had 5 children. I was the last born of the 5. Mom, when she first came over as a picture bride, became married to a Mr. Lee, but he shortly died after the birth of, the son, George Lee, and subsequently, Mom married my dad, and through this marriage here, Mom had 4 children, 3 boys and one daughter, and I was the last of the siblings. As far as I can recall here, being a product, all of us being products of, the Great Depression, as I recall, it was somewhat of a painful time in that, with Mom being, a single parent, lacking the educational skills here, lacking the ability to read and write here, and never having gone to school formally here in the islands, all she did, as I can recall, was work. She worked in a laundry. For a while, she had her own part-time business at home doing laundry, and really it was a difficult time for her. So really for her, as far as interacting with the children here, I can't recall much of that being done. As I can recall as best as I can, is she, I think, worked 6 days a week, and on the Sabbath she went to church. And as far as she sharing with us, the country of Korea, her country being, under the control of the Japanese government here, no, there was very little shared. However, I do recall incidences here when I was very young. She sharing with us Korean publications. Of course, I couldn't read because these are all written in Hangul and Korean letters. But I used to see the illustrations in the book showing the so-called massacres of Koreans and the aggressive nature of the Japanese and how controversial this issue had been ever since. But as far as going into specifics, I think mom, having left in 1917 at her age here, really, as far as her historical knowledge of what is really truly going on in Korea at that time, I don't really think she had much knowledge. And of course, we were at that age. I was awfully young here to really truly understand really what is going on. So all I knew was that, well, we had a country of Korea, and the Japanese controlled Korea. As far as the predominant language being spoken at home, really, as I recall, Mom spoke both Korean and broken English, pidgin English, if you will. And again, I believe Mom did not have much of a formal Korean education, and as such, really, as far as sharing with us here and teaching us the language here, it was really not really truly in the mix. She spoke it, and I suppose as being her children, we picked up the language as we went along. I know my brothers and sisters did attend Korean language school on the Big Island, but for me, being the last, and with the Second World War breaking out in 1941, I was under the impression or understood that the language schools were all closed. So I never did have that opportunity here to attend Korean language schools. So getting back to your question here, as far as learning the Korean language, yes, we picked it up on an informal basis here. We could understand, but as far as reading and writing, no, I did not have any kind of formal learning. In fact, as a matter of fact, here with what little Korean I did gain from my mom, it's rather embarrassing in that as years went by and as this new wave of Koreans would come over from Korea to the islands here, I try to use some of the Korean that I learned, but invariably here, it's sort of funny to the new wave of immigrants coming in that my Korean was so archaic. The kind of the words that we use were really words that were spoken in a generation or two past. So that was rather interesting, knowing that. And being an educator here, I finally resolved some years later that, look, I'm born into a Korean family. I've got Korean blood running through my veins. So I was born and raised here in the islands and educated here in the islands. I resolved here to go back to school to KCC, and I took 2 years of formal, Korean, learning, writing and reading and speaking the language, for which I'm very satisfied having done and gone through that experience. Very satisfied.
Is it because you felt a sense of a cultural awakening, or that you went back?
That's an interesting question. Is it due to this sort of sense of cultural awakening? I don't know how to answer that question here. For me, I was born and raised in the islands. I knew I was Korean. I knew that my mom and dad had come from Korea. And during the times that we lived, obviously here, with we living with a single parent, and conditions being what they are here, really we didn't give it much thought about we being Korean, as though I knew we were Korean. Mom prepared Korean foods for us here. We went to a Korean Methodist church, but beyond that, we were Americans. However, in my later years here, yes, I can identify, in a certain way that I am Korean. I have a Korean name. Again, like I stated earlier, Korean blood runs through my veins, and yes, there was this satisfaction on having gone back to school and formally learned the Korean language for 2 years. Living in the kind of a neighborhood that we lived in, and again being a product of, that the Depression years, we're all, in essence, really, as I recall, we're all really in the same boat here. We had in our community, the whole gamut of, ethnic groups here, from Japanese, Chinese, Puerto Ricans, Hawaiians, Portuguese, Japanese. I mean, we had everything, and I suppose by association here, we all knew who we were. If you were Hawaiian, you were Hawaiian. I'm Korean, but as far as being unique that way, we were all in the same boat. We suffered together. We had fun together. We played together. So as far as a kind of a Korean identity here, no, I never took any pride or took any pleasure in being a Korean. In fact, if I recall correctly here, really as Koreans, we were definitely a minority. But circumstances being the way it was back then here, yes, we could identify, with the Koreans in that here, socially here, the church played a major role in our lives when we were young. Like I like to share with friends here, when growing up here, mom, all she did was work. She was very, well, how should I say that? She was just too involved in her work to really supervise, our activities at home during school days or even during the weekends. We went to school Monday through Friday here, and on a Saturday, we'd go to the Saturday matinee. But the understanding was very clear that on a Sunday morning we all went to Sunday school and we went to church. That was a must. And of course the church that we went to was the Korean Methodist Church, which I believe was the predominant Korean church in Hilo at that time.
Oh, in Hilo?
In Hilo, yes. I lived a good nearly 17 years in Hilo. And we identified it was a given that we went to church here, and when you went to church and we had these potlucks here, the predominant dishes along, within the potluck here was Korean food, kimchi and, kalbi and bulgogi and what pop and whatever you may have. And these are something we, of course, just took for granted. This is part of our, our living.
The church in Honolulu, there were two Korean churches, the Korean Christian Church and the First Korean Methodist Church in Kemoku, which, we went, you were my teacher at Kemoku. Mm-hmm. Back in the early days, they were very, of course, very political. A lot of the members of the Korean Christian Church were members of the Tongji-Wei, and many of the members of the Korean Methodist Church were members of the Kumin-Wei. Yeah? Yes. Was it very similar like that in Hilo?
I can't recall we having, churches with such diverse political views here. Politics, for me, growing up here, and again now, when I was growing up, and again, I lived in Hilo, not in Honolulu, where I think politically people were much more akamai and active here. In Hilo, we sort of lived, how should I say it here, our lives, as I look at it in retrospect, really a microcosm here of really what was going on then in this seaport town of Hilo. It was rather quiet, although we were in the midst of the Second World War. We lived life daily here, and we didn't have any air raids, or we didn't have any invasion, or we saw the influx of new people coming to the islands, mainly military personnel, but life went on, and in our little ways here, we just lived our lives here, and we went to church. And as far as politics, we were never involved in that. There's nothing as far as being competitive. So, in that sense, we were, very innocent that way. We were very, very innocent, and to that extent, I appreciate very much having being born at that given time. Times were hard, yes, and yet, in retrospect, here there were nice times. We lived in innocence here, and I know that saying that innocence is bliss, and yet it was nice times being innocent. My time back then, when I was young, is during the Depression. We're just coming out of the Depression and into the Second World War. Now, the Second World War really was, it was global. It really, truly global. And for us, for me particularly, that Second World War almost engulfed all of us in all aspects of our lives here. Like, for example, here, the activities that we had here, going to school. You had the bond drive here, where the schools would sell stamps, and we were encouraged to buy stamps. I remember, and we were encouraged here, to be patriotic to your country here. You supported the war effort. And all kinds of means here, like, for example, here, I remember there was this one drive here to collect aluminum foil to be given to the war drive. I remember that one incident where we as school students here we used the expression snipping. And snipping was this activity where we had a pair of scissors here, and we cut fabric into little pieces that I believe was used as fillers for the pillows. Okay, snipping. And I used to enjoy doing that. Well, perhaps it's because we got out of our daily routine of academic work and got to do this kind of a rather unique activity that we'd never done before. So you can see where the war definitely had an impact on us. For the guys our age, our generation, during that time here, the activities that we had here, to a great extent here, we had games like playing commandos. That was a big thing, and I used to take pleasure in that, with this activity, that I excelled in this activity, which involved the guys breaking up into two groups, and there was really no foe or enemy. We were just involved in two groups now, and the objective here was to go into the bushes, the hillsides, or wherever. And when we were all ready, the signal was given to, okay, we're ready to start. And then our objective now was to track each other down. And whoever remained standing here, okay, that side won. So I enjoyed doing that. So really, our activities were really confined to our community. We rarely traveled outside of our given community, and it was really a very simple, and yet it was a nice times to live in. As far as the Korean population in Hilo, yes, we did have Koreans, but as far as the numbers, in terms of the demographics within that city, really, I really would not know. As I recall, in our church, which was really a place where these social functions were held here, with Koreans from all over the Hilo community attending. And if I were to take a guess here, and this is quite a few years back here, we may have had, again, a wild guess, or maybe 70 to 100 people in the congregation. And of course, as a youngster at my age, we never really got involved with the older generation here. And again, not speaking the language well or understanding the language well or being able to read the Korean hymnals here, we tended to stick to the more English version of the activities in church. So with the younger generation, again, if we met, it would be at church. So as far as interacting or being involved with actively with the kids of my generation, in Hilo, it is a little difficult. We tended to, like as I shared with you earlier here, communication was not as easy as it is today. We didn't have cars now. We didn't have cars. I don't recall we ever having a bicycle. We didn't have a telephone at home. We didn't have
internet.
I mean, internet. What's that? Television. So really, communication was more or less confined to our neighborhood. So within our neighborhood, okay, did we have many Koreans? The answer is no. We did not have many Koreans. There were few and far between. Were we close with those who were within our neighborhood? Yes, I guess fortunately because of our geographic proximity here, we were almost next door neighbors. Yes, we were close in that way. And I appreciated that, and that, more often than not here, these neighbors of ours were economically, better off than we were, so it was a sort of a big plus going over to their places and sort of, leaning on them for some goodies in the refrigerator, and, we didn't have a refrigerator, and, this kind of thing. So, no, really, as far as interacting, socially a lot with the kids of my age who were Korean, no, we didn't have much of that.
What was your everyday kind of foods that you ate when you were growing up in Hilo?
Everyday kinds of food. Good question here. I number one, we didn't have much.
Okay.
We didn't have much.
Eat rice.
Honestly, we didn't have much. Rice was sort of a staple. Yes, rice, pop was a staple here, and as far as panchan, mom, panchan. Mom, what did we have here? I recall mom.
You wouldn't eat kalbi every day, right?
No, that's kalbi was rather on rare occasions here. Mandu, of course, mandu on very special occasion would have mandu.
But your everyday food would be rice.
We'd have rice here, maybe some sardines,
canned sardines.
chopped onions, canned sardines. Of course, it canned. Fish, fresh fish. I don't recall we really having fresh fish often. Perhaps we did, but no. I can recall it being sent by mom here every now and then to go to the meat market here and buy this so-called round steak. That's a steak with the bone in the center here.
Soup bone.
It wasn't a T-bone now, not T-bone.
A soup bone or something?
It's something like that. Yeah, they call it round steak here, and I'd buy that here, and mom for dinner here, she'd have it cut in pieces here, cut in little pieces here, and then mix it with vegetables, and that would be the
stir fry.
The stuff, that we had along with rice. But beyond that here, for breakfast, mom wasn't home for breakfast. Mom was already gone to work by the time we got up here, and we had to fend for ourselves. So our breakfast consisted of milk, not too much milk here, maybe some chocolate, some hot water and chocolate here, and perhaps a piece of toast at best, and that was it. On the weekends here, again, mom was at work, so we had to fend for ourselves here. So again, on the weekends here, invariably, where we lived here, there was nothing much to live at home, so we spent most of the day outside with the gang. So we just lived off the land. what do you call it? Guavas, mangoes, whatever was in season here, that is what we had. We didn't have much money, so obviously we couldn't buy our lunches, and just never done. I went to the traditional public schools there in Hilo. I started out with Hilo Union School, completed 6 years, then went on to the Hilo Intermediate School for another 3 years, from grades 7, 8, and 9. And then after that, we went on to the Hilo High School. I completed my first year, my 10th year in high school, and just before my junior year, the family moved over in 1951 to Honolulu. It was at which time here, the reason for us moving to Honolulu was that my eldest brother was starting school on Manoa campus.
Oh, okay.
And being like a surrogate father here, we all decided to, we had really no ties to hold us down in Hilo. We had no property, we had no wealth. And it was almost a given here that since our eldest brother was moving on to higher education here, I think it would be appropriate here for the family to move on over as well.
So what school did you finish up here?
I finished up at McKinley High School, class of 1953.
Here?
Here.
And you came back to Water to help out.
And after all is said and done, finished up my career here at McKinley. So it's...
Wow, that's interesting.
If I were to name a particular teacher or a couple of teachers here, in the elementary school, we had a Mrs. Ludloff. Mrs. Ludloff was my 6th grade teacher, and I liked her. And why? I think I liked her because she used to select me to be the group leader to sing the song at the beginning. It was at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we always sang, the song to quit classes for the day, and I used to just welcome the opportunity here to be up front here and lead the class in singing that end of the day song. Well, that I appreciated very much. In middle school here, I appreciated Miss Beveridge. She was my English teacher. This was in grade 8, I believe. I can't recall her first name, but it was Miss Beveridge, a holy woman. But I appreciated her in that. I remember she was very encouraging here, and she appreciated my writings and my expressions here, and she encouraged me to really continue on in my studies here, and I do well in the future. So that I'll never forget that. I thank you for bringing up that.
And then at Hilo, did you have any encouragement there, or
at Hilo High School?
Or McKinley?
At McKinley, yes, at McKinley High School. I think in a way it was a blessing that I personally moved over to Honolulu. In that, having through my experiences now, with Mama being so busy in school, and I'm not using this as an excuse, but for me, I found it was very, very easy, not to get involved in academics. Mom was busy with work. She was disinclined to, come to PTA meetings. This is one regret, and yet, in retrospect, I understand. Mom, being a single parent here, she couldn't communicate very well. It was very embarrassing, but she was very respectful of the schools. But as far as, coming to school here and participating as an active parent here, this is something that she had difficulty doing, and I understand, really. Now I really do. Though at that time I used to wonder, gee, why didn't Mama come? But I understand. She had her difficulties, and partially because of this, it was very easy to slack off as far as school. And as time went by here, I can recall in high school, well, even in middle school, I did very little studies here. We carried the books to and from school, but as far as getting seriously involved in academic work here, I just lacked the discipline. And it was so easy to, after school, the boys getting together and let's go out and play ball with whatever activity was predominant popular at that time, we were involved, engaged in that particular activity.
Do you play sports in McKinley?
At McKinley, well, I played a year. I tried out for the basketball team. I made it for 1 year, but I didn't do very well. I think I sat on the bench. I sat on the bench more than I played. But I did. I loved basketball, but I was really not. I was really not that competent. Though I appreciate the pleasure that I did. I was selected to make the team. But getting back to the academics here in school. So when I was a sophomore in Hilo High here, really I wasn't doing very well. I wasn't doing very well here, and getting involved with guys and activities here that was really less than really kosher. By moving to the islands here, to Oahu, and coming to McKinley High School, it was really a blessing in disguise. I say this because coming to a school, as a junior at McKinley High School, not knowing anyone, sort of spurred me on to study. And I appreciated that, in that, I did well. In my junior year, I did very well in school here, and I moved further on in my academics here, and I continued. No, right after, no, there's no question, did I go on to university straight after high school? No, I did not. I wanted to, and this has been a dream of mine here for a long, long time. And my simple rationalization for this is that my eldest brother was in the Second World War. He was in Europe in the 1940s.
Your oldest brother?
The eldest brother, yes, my eldest brother.
The one that went to university?
The one that was at the university, that's correct. This was in the 1940s. I'm sorry?
He taught at the university?
Yes, he was in the sociology
department.
George. He was in the Second World War, and I remember those years. And again, so you can see how the Depression and the Second World War were really formative years for me. It impressed me in many ways. And for me, my brother had gone, and I guess we were really patriotic during those years here. And for me, I admired my brother here, again, like being like a surrogate father here and going off to serve the country here. I was very impressionable at that time. Then my brother, who was just above me here, after high school, he entered the army, and he was in Okinawa when the Korean War broke out. And in fact, I almost remember that date to the day. It was June 25th, 1950, when the Korean War broke out. I remember. I might be more than a year or two. I was in high school. Yes, I was in high school. What, my sophomore year? 50. This was in 1950. So I remember, and really it was. We were worried about him, and more particularly during that time here, I recall here. I used to read the paper every day, because in search of the casualty list that would be printed out in the papers.
So he did go to Korea?
In Korea.
He did fight in Korea?
He was in Korea, yes. He was one of the, I believe he was with the 24th Division. He was stationed in Okinawa, as I understood. At that time when the war broke out, he was in Okinawa and was one of the first guys over there. And if you recall, I don't think you'll recall, but back then, the media, particularly here, the newspapers, television was not really established then, but with the newspapers here, Star Bulletin, the advertiser here, front page news here would of course focus on this big issue in Korea, and they'd have maps of South Korea, and more specifically on the given area where the North Koreans had advanced down south, and as that perimeter here diminished and until we ended up with that Pusan perimeter at the very bottom here. We at home here, goodness me, my brother's over there, and what's going on here? I mean, we're being pushed back and back and back here, and we look at the casualty. I was just a 15, 16-year-old kid at that time, but of course, obviously, we're concerned about these issues, and I'd look at not knowing that, of course, the parents would be informed first if anything happened to my brother here, but I'd look into the, media and the list of casualties here that, emerged here. And so for me, again, the military was a big thing. So for me, getting back to your initial question, did I go to college immediately after high school. No, I did not. I wanted to finish school and join the Army so that I could see the world.
So you graduated in 1951?
1953.
Class of 53.
It was after, yes, the war had in essence ended. It was in 52, I think the armistice was signed. Yeah.
So you were then stationed in Europe?
Yes, no, I wasn't stationed in Europe here. I took the examination to volunteer for the U.S. Army, and I received my basic training at Fort Ord, California, and my advanced training at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. It's an engineer training school here, and I received training and advanced training in multiplex map compiling. This is in cartography. It's simple terms, involved in making military maps. Excellent training here, and I appreciate having had that opportunity, in that I developed my drafting skills here, and more so with this kind of skills, particularly at that time. The Army couldn't just send you anywhere. Like if you were an infantryman. If you were an infantryman, they can send you anywhere. But with my MOS, we call it the military, it's an acronym for a military occupational skill. My MOS, there were very few places that they could send you to, since you needed the equipment, the high-tech equipment to do the kind of work I did. So I was sent to Tokyo, Japan here, and spent 4 years there, and upon getting my discharge, I had the GI Bill, and I went on to school and completed my schooling, and have been with the Department of Education ever since.
Did you go to the university?
The University of Hawaii, yes.
Did
my
you
undergraduate.
meet your wife in Japan?
No, I married my wife. I met and married my wife in Japan here, and yes, we've been together for nearly 50 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
That sounds like a record.
Yeah, it's. I sort of take a lot of pride and pleasure in that, really.
When you were in the military or going around, did you feel any kind of prejudice, the fact that you were Korean or anything like that, or
Good question. Very good question. Yeah,
Hawaii?
good question there. I was, as far as prejudice here, perhaps a little. But being young, I was 18 at that time here, you're very innocent. Racial prejudice here, being born and raised in the islands here, you weren't exposed as much to that as, you are on the mainland. And being an Oriental, we were sort of, halfway between the Caucasians and the blacks here, so we were sort of in between. And no, really, open prejudice, no, but you could feel, I could feel it, particularly when I was on the East Coast here in Virginia. I experienced this feeling of, that you're a definite minority here. There were very few Orientals at that time. You're definitely a minority. You just have to look around you, and you know that, hey, there's no Orientals around you. And yeah, you could sense people, watching you, or looking at you. And that was, yeah, in that sense, yes, I feel just a little bit. Having been in the Army, again, you go through these trials as well here. Good experience here, negative experiences, but it was while I was in the Army that I, had this awakening to say to myself, hey, friend, you've got to get an education here. And I appreciate having that wherewithal to come to that, conclusion that, hey, you've got to get an education, a formal education. So it was while I was in the Army, I think it was in my second year, that I'd come to the conclusion that, hey, to move on in life, you've got to get an education. So I started, taking classes while in the Army through that USAFI, which is an acronym for the United States Armed Forces Institute. The United States government here promoted, this idea of, one's furthering the education here, and to do this here, they gave us an incentive here by I believe paying 2/3 of our tuition. Like, for example, if you took a course here, they pay 2/3 of the tuition here, and you ended up, like, for example, here, I remember, I believe the first course that I took was a sociology course. This was in Tokyo, And through the University of Maryland Extension, professors were hired, and they'd come to our camp, our military camp, once or twice a week, and we'd have our meetings, our lectures, and so forth. And I recall saying, "Hey, this is a real good deal," because back then you could take a 3-credit course in sociology, a university course, and all I paid, I believe, was $20. $20 for a 3-credit course here. So this was my start of my college career. When it was time for me to get out, I'd known that I was getting out to pursue my higher education. I think my brother, and this is when my brother George, really what can I say here, really truly really a surrogate father here. He was at East Lansing completing his doctorates in sociology, and I stopped by. And
that's Michigan State, right?
Michigan State, that's correct, at East Lansing. And yeah, he brought up the subject of, Ogie, my nickname's Ogie. What are you planning on majoring in? I said,
He called you Ogie.
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 It's a short for my Korean name, Yun-ok. Now, just to expand on this just a little bit here, Yun-ok is rather long here. So Mama, to cut it short, and I believe it's common among the Korean national, they'd say rather than Yun-ok, they say Yun-ogi. So rather than say Yun-ok, they just cut it and say Ogie. So it ends up Ogie. So that's been my nickname ever since. I know it's sort of funny, but even my name in itself, just going off on a little tangent here, having a Korean name like Yun-ok. I know many of my classmates way back then, had Oriental names. In our generation, most of us had Oriental names. And Yun-ok, my, from elementary school years here, my teachers would just massacre the pronunciation. And I used to at times, say, "Oh, gee, my name, I'm really embarrassed with this name," and that people have trouble pronouncing his name. They mix that name up here. They call me Wan-ok, Yun-ok, okay, Yun-ok. But after years went by, you sort of, hey, this is your handle here, and this is it. So, whereas many of my classmates throughout the years have had their name changed to a Christian name, or some other names more easily pronounced here. No, for me, I've resolved that, hey, this is my name here, and this is the way it's going to be. I've come this far, and this is it. But getting back to my brother says, "Ogie, what are you planning on studying?" So I said, "Brother, you're in sociology, so I'd like to follow in your footsteps." Showed you how much my brother influenced me. But in his wisdom, saying that if you go into sociology here and end up with just an undergraduate degree here, your opportunities here are somewhat limited here. So you should perhaps reconsider this. So I said, "Well, brother, what else is there for me here? I'm not too keen on science. I've never been good in science, math. The pure sciences here, I've never been interested in really that." So again, he suggested, "Well, why not go into education?" So I followed his recommendation here, and went into education, majored in education here, and then followed through in completion within a couple of years, and now my graduate degree, a few years subsequently. But no, and this is how I got into education. Now, while I was in school here, we already had my son, my wife and I. He was just a little over a year going on 2. And thanks to my wife here, she supplemented our income here by working. And again, she really contributed a lot, to my success. And again, to that I appreciate very much what she did for me and for my son. Were the years rough during my schooling? Honestly, no, they were not. Being a little older when I started school here, I did not participate in any of the social activities on campus here. It was strictly to school and back, and that's it. I'm thankful that I did have safety net here. My mom, bless her soul here, mom babysat, my son here while I went to school and while my wife went to work, and I was able to finish up real quick by going through summer session, regular session, summer session, and post session here, and was able to finish up with the minimum requirements real soon So university life here, unlike the traditional kind of life here, for me it was going to school, getting the job done here, and moving on. So I in terms of my focus, I was focused, and I took a lot of pride here. I really do, and I'll never forget it here. Through my years of going to school at the University of Hawaii, I believe I missed one day of classes. I was so sick. I believe I had a lung infection there, and I just couldn't stand up. I just couldn't stand up and go to school. It's always been my ethic, even at work. If I can walk, I'm going to work. I've been to Korea off and on periodically here. The first time I went to Korea was in take a good guess here, in 1950, I'd say 1955, 56. I was in the army then. I was in Tokyo, and I was sent on temporary duty to Busan, South Korea, to do some temporary work there via the U.S. Army.
Have you been there more contemporarily?
I was there roughly 5 years ago to attend a wedding, and of course the contrast here between the 1950s and 2000 here, approximately, nearly 45, 50 years here is humongous. I mean, it's just unreal how that country had transformed to one where the mountains were bald mountains here. The infrastructure were virtually totally destroyed here. No bridges here, railroads. I mean, it was almost total devastation, particularly here, down south. In Korea, of course, when I first landed, and it wasn't Incheon, it was the Kimpo airfield here back then. Kimpo airfield, I mean, it was a wow. I recall my biggest impression was looking at the concrete buildings here. There were bullet holes in the concrete buildings. And I was saying, wow, this place has been through it. And yet today, I'm impressed. There's no question in my mind here. I had an inkling of what the Oriental people were like here back in 1954 when I first went to Japan here. For me, it was a true eye-opener, being an 18-year-old from the islands here, living a somewhat sedentary, quiet life here, going on to Tokyo and seeing that culture and how it had risen from the rubble of the Second World War to what it was then, 9-10 years after the Second World War. I was flabbergasted as to the work ethic of the Japanese, particularly here the Japanese, and how they work. They sacrificed a lot here, and they rebuilt that country to the point where they are what they are today. So on a large extent here, that the Koreans are doing exactly what the Japanese did half a century earlier here is it's really not surprising. It's impressive. It's very impressive. The Korean dramas, I when it first came out here, maybe a good 4, maybe 5 years ago, I was very impressed with particularly here these historical dramas. The historical dramas were really fascinated and glued to the television to watch the various episodes here. But in recent years here, the dramas are dealing more with contemporary issues here and in more modern times here. And I honestly refuse to watch these dramas. I refuse to watch these dramas. More so since I'd heard, and when this was while I was in Korea 5 years ago, that plastic surgery here is a booming business. It's a booming business in South Korea, and These people whom you see on television here are, you know, they're coming out of molds here. You look at one, you've seen them all. They're all the same. They all look the same. They were attractive, yes, but it's plastic surgery that did this. And I don't have to go look at plastic surgery here, so I refuse to watch these shows.
That's a really interesting comment. When you came here to Honolulu, of course, you said your mother joined the Methodist Church, the one in Keomoko Street.
On Keomoko Street, that's right.
So since then, you've always been a member of the Keomoko Street.
Since then, I have always been a member. Well, I've been a member since 1950, 51, 51 here. Just I've been a member, but with with as time went by here, and with the influx of a new wave of Koreans within this community. This new wave of Koreans, as I recall, they were very active here, and it soon became evident here that these Koreans were really controlling the church here. So perhaps I saw it as an opportune rationalizing, so an opportune time for me to just drop here and leave.
Well, my auntie, what they did, a lot of them actually moved to the other church, the one on by St. Thomas Square.
That's correct. Yes, that's was it First Methodist? First Methodist Church. And we did that too when Harry Pack was there. But after Harry Pack left here, we sort of just drifted away. To this day, we don't attend church here, but it doesn't mean that really I don't uphold the values of morality and Christianity.
So church, in a lot of ways, growing up and in your young adult years and your adult years, was really a social kind of had social function.
It did. It really served as a gathering place for, particularly here for my generation here. Product of the Depression years, the first generation Koreans here. Yes, I think this is a tremendous opportunity here for these first generation Koreans here to gather here and really do their things as Koreans. For me here, I do in retrospect here I do value the experiences I had in church, and that unknowingly at that time here for me, being a kid here, going to Sunday school on a Sunday morning when you want to be in bed and just relaxing here was somewhat of a chore, or playing. It was somewhat of a chore, and yet, unknowingly here, though, mom in her wisdom, in her infinite wisdom here, had us go to church, and invariably it'll get to you. How would I describe myself as being? Am I a Korean? Really, no, I do not. I really do not see myself as Korean. I just look at myself as a human being, a decent human being here, a caring guy, sensitive. I like helping people, regardless of their backgrounds here, and maybe that's the reason why I enjoy so much doing what I'm doing today. Being in this position as the admissions officer for this particular school, I'm in a critical position to do things for people, to assist people, to expedite getting things done. And in that sense, I feel a real sense of worth in accomplishing, helping people, help themselves. There's no doubt in my mind here. In my later years here, as I reflect here, I do appreciate mom having come here, knowing that in Korea, mom's conditions here really shows in really dire straits. Being in that kind of condition here where she had to leave and come here as a picture bride here under those kinds of conditions, it's really rough. And had mom stayed there, I can see where my conditions would be less than comfortable being in Korea. But having come here and really having my start really with very humble beginnings here, there's no bitterness, there's no regret here. I can honestly say without flinching here that really I was blessed, being brought up in the times that I was brought up, Um, I appreciate having gone through that experience, and you know, having gone through the experience, you learn patience, you learn, you know, delaying your gratification for things that you want. You learn to, you know, you learn to, though you may not have known at that time, you learn to, you know, eventually take responsibility. You know, it's and practice moderation here, and I like what, you know, the psychiatrist here, if I may mention him, M. Scott Peck, had you know, cited in his book, The Road Less Traveled here, that, you know, we must always seek the truth, seek the truth. And for me, I can honestly say, at this stage in my life here, I reflect back and say, you know, it's been a good life. It's really been a good life here. We went through a lot. The family did go through a lot here. But you know, though we went through a lot, our family to this day, the siblings are as close as we've ever been. And what more can I say here? It's just a wonderful thing. It really is a wonderful thing having, you know, us go through all of these years, these trials and tribulations, these emergencies that we've come across here, not having a father here, mom just struggling along here, and along comes these great world wars, the Korean wars, the conflicts here, and you know, these ups and downs. I mean, it wasn't always a positive experience here, but through it all we prevailed here, and now in our golden years here, we look back and we can say honestly, no regrets. It's been a good trip. It really has been.
You're watching Olelo Community Television, exclusively on Oceanic Cable.
Building community.